All right. Is my screen visible and is it on PowerPoint mode? Can you see it? Someone can just indicate because I can't hear it now or see someone. So anyone that just can say yes, you can see the PowerPoint.
We can see it, Cecilia.
Thank you very much and thank you, colleagues. Let us start with this presentation. The first thing that I want to emphasize and that we must preach to the learners is questions must start on a new page. That is the first thing that I want to emphasize. The other one is after each subsection question, draw a line, and especially on graphs, tables, and drawings, we must have a caption or a heading, and learners must use their rulers and their protractors and compass when drawing a graph. So please emphasize that, and especially in the exam, they must take all this apparatus with them to the exam so that they can do and draw the graphs. Colleagues, let us go then on to our first one, and that is reproduction in invertebrates. And we must emphasize reproductive strategies. There's a big confusion on the fact that when is a learner supposed to answer on vivipary and when must they answer on precocial? And I hope I can bring some clarity on this. So remember that reproductive strategies include all these aspects. External and internal fertilization is a reproductive strategy, and the reproductive strategy is to ensure that fertilization did take place and ensure survival rate. So external fertilization, internal fertilization is part of reproductive systems. Ovovivipar, ovovivipar, and vivipary is part of a reproductive success. So when we refer to embryonic development or where is the embryo developed, then the answer will be on vivipary, ovovivipary, and vivipary. The type of egg it's straightforward. It's the amniotic egg. We will refer to that in our presentations. And then the type of development, then we look and we refer to precocial and artificial development. And also a reproductive strategy is parental care. And we will focus on that in the next slides. So first of all, external fertilization. Colleagues, they will give us a not familiar scenario or animal, and they will refer to their reproductive strategies either in a paragraph, and then questions will arise, and you have to answer these questions precisely. So when it's external fertilization, a large number of eggs are produced so that the chances of fertilization is high because eggs are fed on by predators or the eggs can be washed away. So that will be your explanation. Your cause and effect, the cause is large numbers will be produced. Why? What is the advantages of or how is it adapted for external fertilizations? Large number of eggs are produced and the reasons for. Then if we look at internal fertilization, what is the advantages of internal fertilizations or how does infertile fertilizations increase the chance of fertilization? Okay, so few gametes are needed for fertilization so that the organisms don't have to produce a large number of gametes. They are protected in the uterus and they are protected from predators or environmental conditions. So explain why we say it is protected. Protected from what? And then also internal fertilization does not need water so that fertilization can take place as in external fertilization where we have the example of the amphibians or the fishes. Okay, so please emphasize this. And that is very important, not only to determine or to explain what is external and internal, but also what is the advantages or how are the organism adapted for these fertilizations. Colleagues, in the amniotic egg, I will give, we will look at it in the next slide. Vivipary, when the learners have to explain vivipary or identify what type of embryonic development does take place or did take place, then it's important to state where does the embryo develop. So in vivipary, the embryo is in the female's body or it's in the uterus and it receives nutrition via the placenta. Vivipary, the embryo is in an egg and the egg is outside the body of the female and the female lay the egg. And over vivipary, the female lay the egg, the embryo is in the egg, but it is outside the female body. So please make sure that I think it's not outside. I think this one is inside. Ansu, are you in the meeting?
I am.
Isn't that one inside?
It's inside.
Dankie. This one is inside. It's inside the female's body. So that is important to note. Colleagues, it's not about are we going to ask it. It is asked because you must remember that reproductive strategies is, I think, 9 marks or 11 marks, 12 marks in the paper, and it's very difficult to get all the marks. So definitely they will ask on these terminology, they will ask a question. So make sure that learners knows this. So in the paragraph, you will see we have some of the examples that you can apply. This we must teach to the learners. This we must emphasize to the learners that they must exactly explain it like this. So the other thing that we don't emphasize a lot, but that they do ask is parental care. So what does parental care refers to? It improves the offspring survival. How does it improve the offspring survival? The parent gives feeding to the offspring, it gives protection to the offspring, but now we must indicate protection of or against predators or protection against temperatures or the different temperatures. And then also one of characteristics of parental care is that the parent teach the offspring in some cases like hunting and seeking for food. Colleagues, this is very, very important. When we say, okay, you must explain why parental care or why this organism display parental care, somewhere in the paragraph you will see that either they protect them, either they feed them, and you apply that. They are the mother fed them milk or whatever, then it is parental care, and then the parent care for the offspring by including feeding. So that improves the offspring survival rate. Or they protect the offspring against predators, that improve the offspring survival rate. So both ways this question can be asked. How can parental care increase survival rate? Or what is the essential or the significance of parental care? So it improves the survival rate. And how do they do that? They feed or they protect it against predators. So we must name that and label that. So you remember there was once a question on frogs, parental care that they have. They protect the eggs and they carry the eggs. All right. So then we have this one. And colleagues, this is important. And they do ask it. And every time the 9 or 7 marks that they do ask on this, learners do not get all the marks because of small mistakes they made. So if we look at precaution, and in precaution, we must remember that sometimes they give a paragraph and then they say you must identify why this is precocial development or artificial development. Remember to say after birth. the eyes are open. Or after birth, the eyes are closed. They are not blind, the eyes are closed. Or after birth, they have fur or they have feathers. So we must each and every time refer to after birth. You remember when we did this with term 1, Tate Ramakunopi also emphasized on that. So please, colleagues, after birth, the eyes are open. After birth, the eyes are closed. All right? So parental care, there we have parental care. In precocial development, low degree of parental care, and in artificial development, high degree of parental care. Mobility, young can move soon after birth. There you can see again after birth. And young have limited ability to move freely. Remember to say after birth. So please, 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 we must start teaching this correctly, and we must emphasize, or we must facilitate this and demonstrate it to learners so that they know how to answer it. It just does not need them just give them the PowerPoint or give them the video. Please make sure that we understand this concept, because we, in each and every video and revision lesson, we emphasize on this, but still when we are at the marking, we can definitely see this was not facilitated with learners. All right, and then colleagues, we must also, on the yolk of the egg, precocial have greater quantity of yolk, therefore a well-developed cheek is born or developed, and a low quantity of yolk, a less developed cheek is born. So that is very, very important to know the corresponding that there is about the number of yolk or the amount of yolk and the development of the cheek. So again, this 3 or 4 slides, and maybe I spent 2 minutes time on it, but it is very important, especially for June, September, and December examinations. We cannot lose those 9 or 12 marks that they ask, and they ask it over and over again. They just use another type of organism, but the concept, we must teach the concept. I know that when we are in the class, we only teach, okay, don't worry, precocial development, now eyes are open, they can walk, they have feathers, and they can protect themselves. That is you are only touching on the surface of this concept. Please go in deep with this, and please facilitate these teaching tips to the learners and make sure that they do understand the full concept of reproductive strategies. If we look at ovipary, ovovivipary, and vivipary, the important thing is that the development of the embryo is external to the body. Ovovivipary is inside the body, and vivipary is inside the body. Also, you can look at the nutrition and emphasize the presence of yolk in case of ovipary and ovovivipary, and nutrition from the placenta in vivipary. That is the difference. So be careful that they don't ask tabulate the differences also in both of these slides that we just did. So please, colleagues, let us emphasize this to the learners, and those that have the video or are having the presentation, make sure that you understand these concepts very clearly. So I just took a random example, and then we can see, if we look at the kangaroo reproduced by sexual reproduction, after mating, the fertilized egg undergoes gestation. we must also remember that what is the terminology of gestation? It's from fertilization takes place until the young or the embryo is born. They give birth to offspring that is hairless and blind and only a few centimeters long. The offspring move from the vagina by following a trail of saliva secreted by the mother to the protective pouch, where it remains for a year. During this time, the offspring drinks milk from the mother, who has it in a pouch. After 90 days, it leaves the pouch. So now the first question is, name the type of fertilization in the red kangaroo species. State the reproductive strategies of red kangaroo species and give a reason for your answer. And state 2 ways in which survival of the offspring immediately after birth. So that is the most common questions that they ask, and that is also the questions where the learners struggle the most. So in the answer, the type of fertilization is internal fertilization. Reproductive strategies is viviparity. Why is it viviparity? This is because the offspring develop inside the mother's body and it is born in a developed state, then continues to develop in the mother's pouch. So it's inside the mother. Name 2 ways in which the survival of the offsprings immediately after birth is ensured. They move to the protective pouch where it's safe from predators. You can see there, safe from predators. It's protected, so it's parental care, and the offspring drink milk from the mother. So let us please explain it thoroughly to the learners and also explain parental care to the learners. There is another example that I put in the PowerPoint with that is about survival rate, how to explain survival rate, why is it ovivivipary, fertilization of vultures takes place internally, state 2 advantages of that. So that is a very good example to go through with your learners to prepare them for June exam. Colleagues, when we look at human reproduction, we must always remember that when we do fertilization, it is a haploid sperm cell with 23 chromosomes that fuses with a haploid egg cells with 23 chromosomes, forming a zygote, a diploid zygote with 46 chromosomes. So make sure that they know the definition of fertilization. In human reproduction, the function of the epididymis, we must learn them. They must know the function of the epididymis. The scrotum, the function of the scrotum. It regulates the temperature to ensure maximum sperm production. That is a very important description. It's not to ensure sperm production, the maximum sperm production. It prevents degeneration of the sperm cell, and it keeps it 2 to 3 degrees less than body temperature. It's not it keeps it at 2 to 3 degrees. It is 2 to 3 less than body temperature. Okay, so I know a lot of you will call me again and say at the new ATP, all the glands have the same function, but let us please remember that we know that only the prostate gland can secrete an alkaline fluid. Only the seminal vesicles, and please don't send me SMSs again about what in the ATP is. I really want us to also differentiate between this. So the nourishment of the sperm cell is only the seminal vesicles that give nutrition to the sperm cells so that they can move. Mobility is the primary responsibility of the Cowper gland, and store sperm cells temporarily and ensure that they mature is only the epididymis. So let us get this in order, also explain it to the learners like that. Ansu, is there something that you want to add here?
No, not at all. I'm fine, thank you.
All right, human reproduction, there is a activity that you can do with your learners when you prepare them. That is why I'm saying if you can copy this for your level 1 learners, colleagues, there's no way that they cannot have, or why they have to have a level 1. If we look at spermatogenesis, please let us understand one another now very clearly. Don't tell the learners, and I'm referring with 10 fingers to myself, because when I do direct learner support, I will say spermatogenesis is in the exam guidelines. Please learn it and make sure that you know this before you come into the hall. So that is totally wrong. Learners must be, either you must drill it, you must explain it, you must let them write a test, whatever we are going to do, but we cannot let learners not have 4 marks or 5 marks out of 5 for spermatogenesis. So please, under the influence of testosterone, diploid cells, there it is. Now I'm doing just what I say we must not do, but please, colleagues, we must drill learners, especially our level 1 learners, on spermatogenesis. It will be either spermatogenesis or oogenesis, but we can guarantee that one of these are going to be in the exam guide, in the examination. So let them study this. This is not rocket science, and they must explain it like that. I want to emphasize the same on oogenesis, colleagues, and I was shocked when I moderated, and I again raise my hand to say, if you want me to write down oogenesis now without having a look at this, I also will fail this. But we cannot having a memo and then also mark oogenesis just the way we want to mark it. I remember the day when we did this term 1 topics, and Tate Ramakonopi indicate that the mark is at the end of each sentence, and in this case, it means that it must be stated exactly like that. And Ansu sent me a message this morning to say, Cecilia, make sure that learners wrote all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dots. Even if the allocation is 5 marks or 6 marks, let them write everything as it is stated in the exam guidelines and in this order. Let us do that. I know there was some questions lost in the March test, but let us do this in this order, and let us please let learners learn it like that. So for the June exam, I don't know what is the end of the year and where do they do allocations, but if they are not stated like this, we are not going to allocate marks in the June exam. So please, this is NB, 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 and we must learn it like this. Yes. Ansu, anything that you want to add?
No, Cecilia.
Tabo Ubari.
Okay. Good, thank you. So colleagues, up till now, if I look at all the slides that I give you, definitely we ask questions on that. There's no slide that I presented that there is not questions on that one. So frequent questions that we have is on where does fertilization takes place in the fallopian base? In the fallopian base. What is the hormones? I will come back to hormones while Ansu is still here. I'm going to present a slide so that we can see what is the responsibility of the hormones, and then the structural adaptations of the uterus for development. Make sure that our learners know how to explain thick muscular, what is the cause of that? Hollow to accommodation the growing fetus, flexibility, what is that? also for the growing fetus. So this is also very, very important. And then the thickened endometrium serves as attachments site for the embryo during implantation. So that is the adaptations of the uterus. So make sure our learners knows this. And then, colleagues, the thing that we also see in final exams is now they start asking what is the function of the cervix, and what is the cervix? It's a low, narrow opening. There is the opening of the cervix, and it stretches and opens to allow the baby through during birth. That is the only function of the cervix. They also ask the function of the vagina. It receives the penis and semen during sexual intercourse or during copulation, and it's also the birth canal. And then the vulva is the opening to the vagina. So we're not always teaching this. We're not always teaching this, and therefore this one is also NB. And you will see a lot of things that are not always asked. We ask them in this June paper, so make sure that we know this. Then the structure of the gametes, also frequently asked, maybe to draw or to label. Remember, there's something about this is the neck, but if the label goes to the inside, it refers to the mitochondria, and the mitochondria gives energy through respiration for the sperm cell to move. Did I state that correctly, Ansu?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. There's the adaptations of the sperm cell, the mitochondria that gives energy for the tail to move, the torpedo or shaped head. The acrosome, please let they make sure that they know what is the acrosome, and it is enzymes that penetrate the membrane of the egg cell. So very important that the adaptations. There's a question that the learners can do, which is a good question to go through with your learners. I just want to emphasize something here. 2.4.2, the name the part of the testis where spermatogenesis takes place. Is that correct, Ansu? Can you hear me, colleagues?
Yes, sorry, I can. Sorry. Yes. Name the part of the testis where spermatogenesis takes place.
All right, so it's
Semi-viscerous tubulus. Yes, it's fine.
okay. So look at this question. They ask in the testis. They don't ask in the male reproductive system, in the testis. I just want the correct Afrikaans name for that one, Ansu.
Saadbasis.
Saadbasis. Good. So please, the Afrikaans people, saadbasis. So there's a activity that you can go through. Then colleagues. Yes.
Kan ek nog iets sê asseblief? Skus.
Yeah.
It's important, ladies and gentlemen, just to again go back to that mitochondria in the middle piece of the sperm cell. Remember, that's also a middle piece. So the mitochondria, every time that I talk about the mitochondria, I teach the children to say that it uses glucose during cellular respiration to produce energy for movement. So I know sometimes it only counts 1 or 2, but don't just say mitochondria produce energy. Please add through cellular respiration, at least that.
Thank you very much for that input. Then, colleagues, this is very important. So when we look at this in general, the learners must know the development. So the development of the follicle is stimulated by FSH. So the FSH stimulates the follicle to develop into the Gravian follicle. Then it is important that ovulation takes place. And it is important sometimes the learner must not always assume that it is on day 14. Sometimes this can be a day 13 or a day 16, so they must read it from the graph. So ovulation takes place and LH is responsible for ovulation and the formation of the corpus luteum. So because we remove homeostasis from the paper 1, we have to ask all the reproductive hormones and negative feedback of this of the female reproductive hormones. So please, they must be able to identify. They must be able to identify the Gravian follicle. They must be able to identify ovulations. They must be able to identify the corpus luteum, and in this case, the corpus luteum is disintegrating. This is very, very important. So usually estrogen peaks before ovulation and progesterone peaks after ovulation, and we will tell you now shortly afterwards why and from which organ or organelle is estrogen. Estrogen comes from the Gravian follicle. Progesterone is from the corpus luteum. So make sure that your learners really understand this diagram and that they can also, so that they can also identify which hormone is produced. So for in this case, the pituitary gland will secrete FSH. FSH will stimulate the follicle to develop until a Gravian follicle is formed. Then estrogen will be secreted. This one will secrete estrogen from the pituitary gland. Again, LH will be secreted to cause ovulation, and then the corpus luteum will be formed, and the corpus luteum will produce progesterone. All right, so that is important to know. So in case of where the corpus luteum are still continue to develop, later on the placenta will, can't spell, the placenta will take the function of secretion of progesterone over, so that the corpus luteum stay intact. That is when fertilization took place. So this is very, very important, colleagues. If we look at the graph again, so it is important to note that why is the LH levels high? Why is LH secreted? That is because of the estrogen level is at its highest. So there, before LH, the estrogen levels are very high, and because of that, we have the secretion of LH. Okay. So again, progesterone levels, if progesterone levels is high, then it have a negative feedback mechanism. The negative feedback mechanism of progesterone is very, very, very important. I just want to see. Yeah, I will show it to you later. So learners must understand this diagram. Learners must know the different phases of the follicles, like the Gravian follicle, the ovulation, the corpus luteum, which structure secrete which hormone is very important. They must be able to identify the levels in the hormonal cycle and the ovarian, so that they can mention the ovarian hormones. Very, very, very important. So these slides are very important for the learners, and they must be teach on this. Which is the hormone? What is the hormone function? Which gland secretes the hormone, and what happens with the hormone levels. Colleagues, if we look at this, is a very nice activity that learners can do or practice on to see that this is the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland secreted A will be FSH. FSH will stimulate the follicle to form a Gravian follicle, and this hormone will be then estrogen, because estrogen is secreted by the Gravian follicle. Then ovulation takes place. Ovulation takes place because of the hormone of LH. Why is LH secreted? Because of a high concentration of estrogen. Then we have the corpus luteum, and the corpus luteum secreted progesterone, and the development of the progesterone takes place. If the corpus luteum stay intact and it is fully developed and grow, then this means that this person is pregnant, and the corpus luteum still going to produce progesterone. So after day 28, the progesterone levels will still be high. So that is very, very important. And then also, if we look at this question on 2.2.6, explain the negative feedback mechanism between A and C, and that will be progesterone and FSH. And we are going to, this is NB, and look at this. When fertilization occurs, the corpus luteum does not disintegrate. It continues to secrete progesterone. High levels of progesterone in the blood inhibit the secretion of A, or less FSH is secreted. Less FSH is secreted, ensuring that no new follicles are formed. And that is very, very important. Ansu, can you emphasize something, or did I say everything?
No, Cecilia, I think you said everything.
Good. Colleagues, there we go. There's another nice activity that I think it was in a March test or in a previous September exam, questions that I look at and that you can do with your learners just to emphasize the differences of the hormone levels and also negative feedback. The differences of the follicle development, just to emphasize there, we want the marula is a solid ball of cells, and the blastocyst is a hollow ball of cells, and then we use this word. Am I right, Ansu?
Yes,
The
yes.
blastocyst.
Yes,
Now,
it's important. Yeah, it's important that they connect the ball of cells and the hollow ball of cells with the marula and the blastocyst.
Thanks. Okay. So there's a question that you can do. And to exercise this concept that we put in, therefore, I said I did make it black and white so that it can print. You can print 2 or 3 slides on one page and give it to your learners. Just to emphasize the umbilical artery, functions of the choreo is important, and the chorionic villi, the amnion, the amniotic cavity, and the amnion fluid. The umbilical cord includes these 2 arteries, and I just inserted the differences between the 2 arteries, as that is a favorite question that are either in short questions, section A question, or in a section B question to explain. The different parts of embryonic development and the membranes, the chorion, the amnion, and then the chorion that develop this finger-like structures, the villus. Right. Colleagues, very important, the placenta. How is the placenta developed is NB, and this is the way we are writing it. The chorion develops and form finger-like outgrowths, the chorionic villi. This attached to the endometrium, and together they form the placenta. and also explain the role of the placenta. What is the functions of the placenta? And not only list them, explain and discuss the functions fully with the learners. Very, very important. There's a question that I can do. There's the answer. There's another type of questions with the answer, just to emphasize the differences in hormones. Who secreted the hormone? What is the function of the hormone? And colleagues, negative feedback, although we don't going to do homeostasis, we are going to ask the negative feedback of FSH and progesterone. Responding to the environment, nervous system, NB, NB, NB. Colleagues, this is also, I think it counts 60 or 50 marks of the question paper, so it must be taught and in the classroom. Especially it's the last week, and I know we are all rushing, so sometimes we see that in this part of paper 1, we neglect thorough teaching of the nerve system. So it is important to know that the nerve system, we divide the nerve system into the central nerve system and the peripheral nervous system. So if the question is, which part of the nervous system does the brain and the spinal cord make up? The learners must not only write central nerve. It must be central nerve system, peripheral nerve system. Then it is important to know that the peripheral nerve system consists of cranial nerves and spinal nerves. And that is the peripheral nervous system. The next, I just want to emphasize also that the peripheral nerve system, which is the cranial nerves and the spinal cord nerves, can be divided as autonomic and somatic. And autonomic we can divide into sympathetic and parasympathetic. So I know this is very difficult for level 1s, but our level 7s must know this. Our level 7s must know this. So peripheral nerve system, central nerve system, what do they consist of? And the autonomic nerve system is sympathetic and parasympathetic. So colleagues, I put in this slide because this is very important, because if they can ask, or if I ask in the June paper, what is the sympathetic reaction or the sympathetic system, for example, if adrenaline is secreted? So it is a level D question, eh? And maybe it's very blind of me to ask it or whatever, but if you ask what is the sympathetic reaction of adrenaline, or what is the influence of adrenaline on the sympathetic system, then learners must know what is the sympathetic system. The sympathetic system is when the heart rate increase, when blood vessels constrict, when the increase of blood pressure takes place, when there is a decrease in peristalsis. So decrease in peristalsis is sympathetic. Sympathetics is where they work. Parasympathetics when the muscles relax. So I did put this in so that we can emphasize this, especially for our level 5, 6, and 7s. They must know. They must know. And definitely, as you can hear, I did ask something on if maybe which one of the following is combination of a sympathetic reaction. So forgive me for that, colleagues, but I did ask. So therefore the learners must know this. Then response to the environment, location of the different parts of the brain, as it is now stated in the exam guidelines. In this diagram, learners can definitely see where is the hypothalamus, where is the pituitary gland, the cerebrum, the corpus luteum, and cerebellum and medulla oblongata. I just want to emphasize here that learners must also know what does all the parts control, but I want to emphasize something very clearly here. So the first thing that I want to show you is the first big hump in the spinal cord will be the pons varioli. They don't have to know that. Usually the second hump is referring to the medulla oblongata. And then, so this part is number 4, and then it is the spinal cord here for reflection. Then, 2 things to remember, 2 things to emphasize. So in this part of the brain, in the cerebrum, it's voluntary movement. You must listen carefully, it's voluntary movement. But in this part of the brain, if the word is coordination of movement, then the coordination of walking, the coordination of, the coordination, or a boy is coloring in a picture, and which part of the brain helps him to coordinate and color in between the lines, something like that. So when we hear the word coordination of movement, then it is the cerebellum. Also, the cerebellum is for balance. But now we also come and they say something like the reflex or the coordination of breathing, or the coordination or the reflex of heartbeat. Then learners start arguing with us, because reflex is most in the spinal cord. Here is reflex. But when we talk about reflex of breathing, reflex of heartbeat, it's only the medulla oblongata. Or the coordination of breathing is not now coordination, now it's the cerebellum. Breathing and heartbeat, irrespectively, coordination of breathing, reflex of breathing, that is the medulla oblongata. So reflex is just a reflex reaction, and that is in the spinal cord. So I hope I'm clear on this, and I hope really that you will understand this one and emphasize the different parts of the brain and the function of the brain to the learners. Colleagues, take time to do this, because this is low-hanging fruits, but learners are doing very poorly in these sections because it's the end of the term, we are rushed, we don't have time to do revision, and I think we will have, the 29th is a Friday, and the next Friday we are writing life science. So the brain and the spinal cord are protected by the meninges. The meninges, they don't have to know the pia mater and the dura mater. They must just know the collective name for the brains. Membranes is the meninges. And then the cranium protects the brain, and the vertebrae protects the spinal cord, and then cerebrospinal fluid is the 3 things that protects the brain and the spinal cord. NB, it's new in the exam guidelines, and we need to emphasize on that. So if I ask what is protected the brain, it is the brain, the cranium, and the cerebrospinal fluid. If we ask the spinal cord, it's the meninges, the brain, the vertebrae. Now it's only the vertebrae, and this is cerebrospinal fluid. So there's a slight differences between the two. So the learners must make sure that they know the correct way, how is the brain protected and how is the spinal cord protected. All right, thank you very much for that. And then the nerve system, what is the need for the nerve system? The nerve system detects changes, it reacts, and it coordinates. What is the nerve system's main function? That is the 3 functions of the nerve system. All right, colleagues, then we have the reflex action, and the reflex action and the reflex Arch is very, very important. And on Wednesday, you are also writing a practical on this. So please make sure that the learners know that the receptor, there is the receptor. The receptor takes a stimuli and transfer the stimuli to an impulse. The impulse is transported by the sensory neuron. Where is the sensory neuron? It is in the dorsal root of the spinal nerve. It transmitted it to the interneuron via a synapse. What is the functional or the significance of this synapse? It is to transport impulse in one direction. Then we have the motor nerve system or the motor neuron, and the motor neuron is in the ventral root of the spinal nerve and it ends in the effector. But you can see we must indicate that the sensory neuron is in the dorsal root of the spinal nerve and the motor neuron is in the ventral root of the spinal nerve. Very, very important. The significance of the synapse is for one direction, transporting impulse in one direction, and that is very important. The next one that I want to emphasize here, you can just go and look at the labels of a neuron, and this is a motor neuron. Colleagues, we are not going to take multipolar polar neuron, correct? That is a description. It's either motor neuron or a sensoric neuron. Also here, this is a sensoric neuron, this is a motor neuron, and it's not monopolar or bipolar, it is straight. We must say which neuron it is. Anshu, are you still there? All right.
Can we go back to the previous slide?
Okay.
Can you just emphasize the definition of the reflex arc and the reflex action? So the reflex action,
Yes.
yeah, just emphasize that, please, because the reflex reaction or action is a quick automatic response to a stimuli to protect the body. So
Okay.
I know this comes from DBE memos, but it is important that you know, you must mention those 4 things. Quick and automatic is one mark, and then to a stimuli to protect the body.
Okay. I will put it in to protect the body. So colleagues, there you have it. It is very important, yes. So NB, it's also NB for Thursday. And we also learn what is the reflex arc. So, you know, Anshu is internal moderator of paper 1. And she also moderated the grade 12 practical. So there you have a good tip for Thursday also. So know your definition of your reflex action, and please, as she said, emphasize on the correct definition. Colleagues, this is just activities that you can do with your learners, practice activities that will assist them to do the reflex arc. And then also I emphasize now the definition of the reflex action and the reflex arc, but also, colleagues, there was a question last year in the November paper. This is actually a level 1 question, as this is coming out of the exam guidelines, that we must know the path of an impulse. And in this case, we will say the impulse is transmitted by the sensoric neuron. There's the sensory neuron via the dorsal root of the spinal nerve to the interneuron, to the motor neuron, across the synapse. It is transmitted then via the ventral root of the spinal nerve to the effector, the muscles. NB, NB, NB. Also for Thursday, learners must be able to explain or describe this path using the diagram. So colleagues, I don't know how to state it more clearly, that this is very, very important, and the way of answering it must be exact. Thank you very much. So the structure and the function of the parts of the human eye, this is using a diagram, is very important, and we must know the parts of the eye. Colleagues, this is really, when we give a diagram to learners, they must be able to identify all the parts. So we must do this in depth with learners, especially adaptations of the sclera. I'm going to emphasize on the choroid of the retina. What is the yellow spot? What is the blind spot? How is the lens adapted for its function? So I'm going to show you now the parts of the eye, and therefore I also put in this. It comes from the DBE textbook, but it emphasizes on the structural adaptations. There you can see, and the function. Something that I want us to really focus on is the inner layer of the eye contains rods and cones. The retina contains rods and cones. The yellow spot only contains not most cones, high concentration of cones, and in the blind spot, no cones, no rods, not a low concentration or less, no cones, no rods. That is very, very important. And then also the function of the lens and the aqueous humor and the vitreous humor is, it plays a role in the refraction of incoming light, and that is very, very important to know these parts of the eye and the role they play. Also, how is the structural adaptations to play, or what is the structural adaptations for the function? If we look at differences between eye accommodation and pupil mechanism, NB, remember accommodation is the lens and the suspensory ligaments and the ciliary muscle. And pupil mechanism is the pupil, the radial muscles, and the circular muscles of the iris. Learners wrote that the radial muscles contract and the circular muscles relax. And then what the more or less light will enter, but they don't mention of the iris, and then they will lose marks. So this is very, 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 very important, and please emphasize on that. Then colleagues, the pupil mechanism, the way they must describe it, there's the pupil mechanism. It is NB that they know this process and this mechanism exactly the way it is stated here. And the wording must be, they must use this wording so that they can have getting the marks. So the pupil constricts or it gets smaller, or the pupil widens or it gets bigger. So the circular muscles, there is a problem here because we must mention muscles, radial muscles of the iris. We must say circular muscles of the iris. And also on this side. So please make sure that your learners know this, and please, pupil mechanism is in the paper. Eye accommodation is in the paper. And with eye accommodation, as always, we emphasize that the ligaments tighten, and the suspensoric ligaments slacken. It's not constrict and contract or not contract, but we use the word tighten and slacken. And then also, colleagues, light rays are focused onto the retina, or light rays are reflect less. Learners wrote more light are focused on the retina. and less light is focused on the retina. It is light rays are refract or bend less. Light rays are refract or bend more. So learners do get confused on this. And I promise you, pupil mechanism is in the question paper, and as well as eye accommodation. It is like oogenesis and spermatogenesis and negative feedback. That is the solid things that learners must know, and they cannot go into the exam or not knowing this. So don't just tell them, like I telling you, go and learn this. You must make sure, you must drill them and make sure that each and every learner, when they enter the hall, knows this. That is where your low-hanging fruits are. That is where your level ones get their marks, because there's no other way. It's not an application. It's stating. The question will clearly state, is it further than 6 meters or closer than 6 meters? And they just have to put these processes or steps in order and explain it like that. So please make sure. Then NB. Colleagues, we don't understand this. And I say we, which includes me, we don't understand this and we don't explain it to our learners. So if we look at short-sightedness, and this is eye defects, learners don't get the marks here. So that is a clear indication that it is not teach or taught in the classroom. So let us look at this. Short-sightedness occurs when a person has the ability to see nearby objects but cannot see distant objects. Okay, so what causes this? An eyeball is too long, the cornea being too curved, the inability of the lens to become less convex. So the image falls here. So if the normal eye is like that, and there is the focus point, and this eye becomes longer, then there's the retina, but the focus will stay there. So please, this is what causes the defect. This is what causes the defect. Now, how are we going to treat this defect? And this is where the problem is. First of all, learners cannot give us what has caused the defect and how can they treat the defect. So we use a convex lens if the focus is in front of the retina, and the convex lens then refract outwards. The light will be refracted outwards to fall on the retina. So first of all, there it goes, and it focuses outwards, and then inwards to the retina so that the image can be back at the retina. Remember, the image was in front of the retina, but when the concave lens refracted outwards, it brings it back so that it's focused on the retina. Long-sightedness, that is the cause of long-sightedness. An eyeball that is too short, the cornea not being curved enough, and the inability of the lens to become more convex. So then we use a convex lens, so the light rays reflect inwards. This one was outwards, the light rays reflect inwards, so then we go there and the light goes to the retina. So make sure that learners know this, how to rectify, how to treat short-sightedness and long-sightedness. And what is long-sightedness? What is short-sightedness? What causes it? NB, NB, NB. Make sure you know this. There is a diagram or questions that learners can look at, that you can do with your learners also. What is the difference? What is astigmatism? What is cataracts? Is also very important to explain, maybe in short questions more. But as I said, that long-sightedness and short-sightedness, They must know in detail. They must know it in detail. Colleagues, the structure and the hearing of the ear, important. We must know and we must identify that we have a outer ear, a middle ear, and the inner ear. Outer ear, middle ear, and the inner ear. And you must teach your learners what is in the inner ear, what is in the middle ear, and what is in the outer ear. What parts of the ear does that consist of? So very important. We use scientific terminologies like ossicles and seminal vesicles, semicircular canals, sorry, it's not seminal vesicles, semicircular canals. Make sure that your learners know this. And then we have the following. If we look at hearing, we must know that when we talk about hearing, we talk about the sound waves that is in the pinna and the tympanic membrane, NB. The vibration, the tympanic membrane is the vibration from the tympanic membrane to the oval window. Pressure waves is oval window converts it to the vibrations to pressure waves that goes to the Corti organ, and impulses. The Corti organ receive impulses and or convert the pressure waves into an impulse and transport it to the auditory nerve. Balance, maculas and crestas and the importance of that, or what do they, the role they play in balance. Right. If we look at this, you can see in hearing, we talk about sound waves in the pinna. And then, colleagues, this is the tympanic membrane, the ossicle, and the oval window is so between the inner and the middle ear. So in the tympanic membrane, there's vibrations. The oval window converts the vibrations to pressure waves. So they won't ask you to explain sound and then you must start with the pinna. They will either do it something and ask a question where you must look at this part or you must look at this part. So you must now definitely know and distinguish which parts are in which part of the ear and what is the role of these parts in hearing. So make sure that you know this. The balance, as I stated before, this is the function of the explanation of the balance. So there's this part of the balance where the crestas plays a very important role, and they are in the semicircular canals, and the maculas are in the sulcus and in the utriculus, and they perform a very important role. And they are stimulated, the nerve impulse are transported along the auditory nerve canal, auditory nerve to the cerebellum, very important. And the cerebellum then sends impulses to the muscle to restore balance. But if we look at the difference, the different parts, NB, what is the role of the crestas? Where are the crestas found? The crestas are found in the ampulla, and that is the role of the crestas. The macula, where is it found? What is the role of the macula in balance? They won't ask both of it. They will either ask which part, or explain how balance is restored when the speed and the movement of the head is changed, or explain the role of the maculas in balance. So the learners must distinguish between this. And this is also like eye accommodation, pupil mechanism. Learners must know this. This is definitely in the June paper, and they must know it by heart, and they must be able to explain it like this. Therefore, make sure that your learners do understand this and that they can distinguish between what is the role of the semicircular canals and what is the role of the vestibulum in this. There's a questions that we can do with your learners to help them understand. Colleagues, this is a part of the ear that they can ask. They can ask in the middle ear, maybe there was infection or it is filled with fluid and congestion, and then they will ask what happens to your hearing. It's about hearing losses, and then the oval window will not vibrate and it will not carry the vibration to the cochlea. So learners must know what happens here in the middle ear and what happens in the outer ear. If there's a problem, what is the problem? What is the effect of that problem in hearing? Also a nice diagram or questions to go through with your learners in preparation. Then the last one is the endocrine system. And this is just the differences between the endocrine and the nerve system. Mostly we want to emphasize that the endocrine system is chemical messengers and the nerve system is electric chemical impulses, and this is controlled by hormones, and this one is controlled by neurons. It's a slow response, and this one have a quick response. Right? Difference between endocrine and exocrine glands, very, very important. It have ducts, secretion is into a cavity. Ductless, hormones release directly into the bloodstream. So the difference between exocrine and endocrine system, very, very important. Very, very, very important for the June exam. Colleagues, as we look at this question on the endocrine system, as I stated, remember we remove homeostasis, so it is very important that your learners know this diagram and exactly know the gland and what hormone does the gland excrete. I want to emphasize on this one. The hypothalamus, there's the hypothalamus, it produces ADH. And I want to emphasize on ADH because this is a confusing hormone. So ADH is produced by the hypothalamus. Then it is secreted by the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland secretes ADH. There we have it. So now the pituitary gland secretes this ADH. So this one produces it, this one secretes it. Then ADH goes to the kidney. The kidney is the target hormone of ADH. And it plays a role in osmoregulation, making the renal tubulus more permeable for water absorption. So that is very important. So look at this, what I demonstrate here. Now, I hope you understand this, because ADH is produced by the hypothalamus, but it's secreted by the pituitary gland, and the target is the kidney. Then the normal hormones, growth hormones, TSH, FSH, LH, and prolactin, that is produced by the pituitary gland and their functions. Remember also the ovarian hormones that we are going to ask, the testes we are going to ask. And then I just want to emphasize also on the adrenaline gland. I already told you that it is very important to know what is the sympathetic reactions that the effect on the sympathetic system that the adrenal glands have. So we must know what is the functions of adrenals. The learners must know them. And then look at this one. Look at aldosterone. Aldosterone is secreted by the adrenal gland, but the target hormone is the kidney. Adrenaline is also produced by this hormone gland, the adrenal gland, but the target hormone of adrenaline is the bronchus, is the liver. It goes to the liver also, and to the heart. I think the heart is there. So there is stimulates the heart. So make sure, especially on ADH, what is the target hormone? What is the target hormone of adrenaline? What is the target hormone of aldosterone? Aldosterone is also in the kidney, and it plays a role in salt concentrations. All right, then colleagues, you can see I highlighted pancreas. Although we are not going to ask homeostasis, we are going to ask the homeostasis of glucoses, glucagon and insulin, as this was also, we did this last year in grade 11, and therefore we are going to ask this one in homeostasis. Homeostasis, we didn't incorporate homeostasis, the whole section of homeostasis, but definitely the homeostasis of glucagon and insulin, as this was one of the topics that you administrate or conducted in grade 11. So there's the endocrine system, where you must know the different glands and the hormones. You can practice that. This is the one on negative feedback that we are going to do, and homeostasis. Remember negative feedback of FSH and progesterone, and also homeostasis of your glucose concentration. So if the glucose levels in the blood rise above normal, the pancreas is stimulated to secrete insulin. There it is. We did do that in grade 11 and we emphasize that. So for this June exam, definitely we're going to ask the homeostasis of glucoses, because glucoses is in the, we did glucoses in grade 11. So that is the only one that we are going to do for this this paper. Colleagues, this brings me to the end of the presentation. I'm going to stop now.